the EU has carefully orchestrated each step of the Brexit negotiations in order to undermine Prime Minister Boris Johnson and lure him into the tunnel of doom, a civil servant has claimed. Mr. Johnson has said he believes a trade deal with the EU is not likely and that the UK should now get ready to leave the bloc's single market and customs union at the end of the year without a new agreement in place. Speaking from Downing Street in a televised speech at the end of last week, Mr. Johnson kept the door open for further talks but blamed Brussels for refusing to negotiate seriously in recent months. He said he would always be willing to hear from the EU-side negotiators if they came back to the UK with a fundamental change of approach. Last month, the UK government set a deadline of October 15 for an agreement to be struck, or clearly be within sight, saying there would be no point continuing talks beyond this week without adequate progress. The UK's chief negotiator David Frost and his EU counterpart Michel Barnier are set to hold further discussions. However, after a summit with the bloc's leaders concluded on Friday, it has become apparent sticking points on fisheries and the level playing field remain. As tensions are set to rise in the coming days, a recent report by a civil servant close to the negotiations suggests Mr. Johnson might have been right to not believe in the good faith of Brussels, urging the country to prepare for no deal, instead. Caroline Bell argued each step in the Brexit negotiation has been carefully orchestrated to undermine Mr. Johnson and lure him into the tunnel of doom. She wrote, "The conclusions of the European Council on Brexit were entirely predictable. The communiqué has been published in draft in the European press and widely trailed in the media for the past 2 weeks. We knew that the Council would not be reaching any decision on a trade deal with the UK, but instead listening to a stocktake of progress in the talks by Michel Barnier. The UK's lack of engagement would be duly deplored, and the EU would double down on its untenable demands of full access to UK waters, control of the UK economy through state aid legislation and judicial governance by the European Court of Justice (ECJ). Ms. Bell noted how the French have been mightily busy in the past few weeks preparing exactly this scenario. She explained, they have repeatedly misrepresented the UK's offer on fisheries, which is, quite frankly, more than any EU state has a right to expect, in order to try to effect the trade-off with the far more important issue of obtaining a stranglehold over the UK economy enforceable in the ECJ. Governance is a polite cover for the kind of oversight the EU wants. Boris's deadline of an acceptable outline of a deal being clear by October 15 has been openly mocked. We will carry on talking until October 31, announced Michel Barnier.